This is going to be part number 4 in the series of tutorials for constructing our target app, and it's also the second one in stage 2. And in the previous one, we got as far as step 16 in the guide for stage 2, where we finished building the target container and deleted it from the scene, so now it's only a prefab. And then we're on step 17. In the scene, we're going to create another empty game object because we're constructing one more called missimpact. In so many words, missimpact is the hole in the wall. So, empty game object, missimpact. It's like the impact of a missed shot. As always, we're going to reset transform and not as a child of any of the existing game objects. Inside missimpact, as a child, we're going to create a cube and disable its box collider. I'm going to explain in a second why. But first, let's give it all the right parameters, which are going to be basically the default ones, except first of all, it's going to be a cube. We can just keep calling it cube, it doesn't matter. And reset, and let me move this aside so I can see them side by side. Negative 0.35 is because what I want it is eventually to be a little in front of the wall. It's basically like a poster that will be stuck to the wall where the impact happens. So it's got to be not exactly at the plane of the wall, but at least a little bit in front of it. And to give it its shape, it basically, a poster is a thin cube. So it's going to be 2 by 2, but with a thickness of 0.1. So 2 by 2. Pretty big, but definitely not as thick. 0.1. It could be even less than that, but we're never going to see it from the side, so it doesn't matter. And we're going to disable its box collider. Now, why do we disable its box collider? Because if we shoot a missile and we hit the wall, it's going to generate one of those. But what if we hit the wall a second time exactly at the same spot? It'll never touch the wall because the collider of the poster will stop it. So we need it to look like a poster, but to have no collider of its own. We need it to collide with the wall in order to trigger, the points and the destroying the missile and all that stuff. So we just did step number 18. In my materials folder, we're going to create a material that we're going to call missimpact mat, and that's going to be basically the picture on the poster. So my materials, create material, and give it to the cube. And the material is going to have as an albedo impact hole and impact hole normal. Again, if you're wondering how I got these to be alphabetical, it's by zooming all the way out because, I don't like, some people find this, helpful. I like it a lot better when I make them smaller, all the way to the left, and then it becomes, little icons and arranged alphabetically. That's my, preference. But under I for impact, here, this is like the, the shape of the hole, and normal. Impact hole normal. Where are you? Here. But you can see that it still looks like it has, white corners. So we're going to change the rendering mode from opaque to cutout, and that way it will ignore the transparent pixels around it. It has to be made that way originally, like in Photoshop. Here we go. Then I can even, not transparent, sorry, cutout. That's it. And then do the cutoff, which is like the sensitivity. I'm going to push it all the way forward so it doesn't have, to 1, so it doesn't have those, those little white pixels around, and that really looks like a hole. It's standing in the middle of the room, but eventually it's going to be on the wall. Assign material to cube, we already did that. Let's see, albedo, alpha cutout, no metallic, no smoothness. No metallic. Yeah, holes in the wall are not smooth. Number 20, if all the parameters are correct, make missimpact, not just the cube, a prefab. So missimpact, prefabs, you're going to become my 5th prefab. And we're going to open it for editing. Because the missimpact, the hole in the wall, when it appears, I want it to appear with an explosion. Not an explosion, but like a, like dust and, some kind of impact. It's going to be based on our explosion, but not exactly the same. So once prefab missimpact is open for editing, from my prefabs, we're going to use my explosion as a second child. My explosion will be added to it. So it's got a cube and it's got an explosion. I'm going to make sure that it's reset, transform. That means that when I play, it's going to look like someone shot a hole in the wall. But I don't want it to look exactly like the same explosion as hitting a target. We don't need everything. For instance, when you hit a wall, you don't see fire. You mostly see like dust. So we're going to disable shower and fireball. Shower, this, hitting a wall does not need that. And also fireball, we don't need that. It's going to have, the trails, the dust, and the smoke. So it's going to look something like this. But did you hear the explosion? We don't need that either. The wall already has its, missimpact sound. So we're going to go to my explosion and say, well, when you're being used for the hole in the wall, I don't need your audio source. Right here. Disable audio source, also customized by unfolding and disabling shower and fireball. So we took shower and fireball out, and we took the audio source out. So it's the same explosion, but in the case of the hole in the wall, it looks more like like a dusty impact, which I like. When you play, you should see the game window prefab and like a dust explosion with no sound, which is exactly what we saw. And that was step number 23. Return to the sample scene and delete the instance of missimpact. Return to the scene with this little, and now since we already constructed it and it's already a prefab, we don't need it in the scene. It will be instantiated by the script. If you're wondering, the scripts are coming in stage 3. So first we need all the objects. It's useless to have scripts that mention objects that don't exist yet. So that's why we create the objects first. We're going to create a lighting container. We're going to create an empty game object. Now, why do we need a lighting container? You'll see. I'll demonstrate as soon as we got a lighting container. Right click and create empty. We're going to call it lighting container. Until now, we had like a working light. And the T doesn't need to be there. I'm going to make sure that the transform is reset, even though it's empty, and move the existing point light you have into it. We should have a point light from stage 1. I'm saying, okay, I'm moving it into a container. And then I'm going to look at it from above, from Y, and say something like this. Well, first of all, I want to see, the icons. The icons are seen if you have something called here, if I make it wide enough, called gizmos on, and in the gizmos I can make the 3D icons a little bigger. So I can see, that the walls have a sound, but I also see this. What I'm going to do is duplicate this point light twice. So I have 3 lights. And I'm going to move them. My personal preference, it's like right now it's too much when they're all in the same spot. I can grab them by the move tool from above and move them this way, or I could just mess around with their X like this. Let's say -10 to one side, and the other one will be +10 to the other side. But also move it back a little bit. So they're kind of like a triangle, or 3 lights. They don't have to be exactly symmetrical. I can decide that they're a little too shiny, but I'm going to do that because they're all inside the lighting container. What I want is the effect of being able to turn off all the lights together. So if I can script it so something turns off the lighting container, I got all the lights, none of the lights. And I want now the difference between dark and light to be a lot more pronounced. I want this to look like a dungeon when it's, dark. Right now there's too much ambient light. So yeah, this is what what it needs to look like. From above, you can arrange your lights any which way you want. Turn off the lighting container, and the stage gets darker. Not dark enough. In order to get it to be dark enough, we're going to go to Window, Rendering, Lighting, and check the tab called Environment, and we're going to change the settings to Environment Lighting. Instead of the skybox will be color, and the darkness of this color will determine the ambience of the room. And also the intensity multiplier will not be all the way up, not all the way down, but somewhere in the middle. I want you to see what that means. What I'm going to do is go Window, Rendering, Lighting, and I want to see, while I'm doing this, I want to see what it does to the game window. So the tab called Environment, the first thing I'm going to do is Environment Lighting is not going to be the skybox, it's going to be a color. And it immediately got darker. Now, if I click on this color to select it, the darker the color, the darker the room. I don't want it to be too light. I don't want it to be too dark because I can't even see the wall. So it's going to be some kind of gray. Like this, something like this. And also the intensity multiplier is right now 1. I'm going to make it about half. I like what I see. This is how dark it's going to get when there's no light. Let's make it even a little darker so I can barely make out the bricks. And the idea is that during the game, when the lighting container's on, it gets that very nice dramatic look. But when the game's over, lights off. Lights on, lights off. It's definitely, there's enough contrast between them. Turn back on the lighting container, and the next step is to create our text UI, where you see the points and all that stuff. This will be done on the next part of the tutorial. I'm turning the lighting container back on.